So, on the theme of cultural history, a lot of people don't think of apples as cultural, but people bred apples. What they did was they would grow some apple trees from seeds, and if they liked the apple, they'd keep the tree. If they didn't, get rid of the tree. So someone in Albany, or Bethlehem actually, right? He grew this one tree that he liked, and he called it the Clapper Flat. And we thought it was gone. I got word that someone down in West Virginia found it in one of the ravines down there, saved it, and there was a place down in North Carolina that was grafting them and bringing back history. So I donated one of the trees to the Historical Society, and I got a couple at my house. But there's a lot of cultural history that we kind of forget, the good and the bad. And here's my first thing. So right after the Civil War, people started with little carts selling food. People were moving to the cities, and here we are, an Irishman, and these were called Mickeys. And to show that we can learn as we go in, I literally just found out about this 2 weeks ago. This was something that I saw on Facebook, and I thought they were joking with me. I thought they were making this up with some AI skit or something, but it was legitimate. A lot of the Irish would come over, sell potatoes, tell stories, and just go down the street. And it's just kind of fascinating. So, like I said, kind of after the Civil War, people started moving into the cities. These little carts would appear in places like Saratoga Springs somewhere in the 1880s, and they could move them, they could do whatever they want, put an umbrella up to keep the guy out of the sun, and he's got a business. Okay. So after the Civil War, again, industrial period, you had all these different carts selling hot dogs, tamales, cigarettes and peanuts, and even down south, chili con carne. So all these things. And it wasn't until about the 1880s, 1890s that we started to see the lunch wagon that was actually something we could step into. So a lot of these towns, it would be the biggest thing. Oh my gosh, we're the big city, we're Elmira, we got a lunch wagon. And this one, as you can see here, or something similar, would cost about $1,200. So here it was, a similar one that was actually pushed off the street. But really, at this time, they were on the street. They were not like this. I had to throw this in somewhere, but they were not popular in Canada, but there were a few in Canada. Okay. So, $1,200 according to something online, roughly $44,000. If you've seen the Metro 20 diner, or the Capital City diner, if I'm calling, out by Crossgates, that was over $1 million. So they're not comparing in cost, but again, it's smaller. So there's an average salary under $500 for manufacturing. Dozen eggs, 20 cents. So there were various things. Obviously, everything was much cheaper, but just to give you an idea of the costs. As lunch wagons became popular, they were obviously in the big cities, but they were varied. You'd have a ton in Boston, you'd have a ton in Worcester, Providence, and then you wouldn't have many in Hartford. You didn't have many in Troy. Troy, like certain cities, had ordinances, and they said, we don't want them in town. So certain cities said yeah, certain cities said no, which was kind of fascinating, but it's just like real life. Certain things are good, certain things are not good. And again, that's my bias of saying I like lunch wagons. So when I got into history about 25 years ago, I started looking at old newspapers, and I found this old newspaper in Greene, New York, 1905. And they're talking about the railroad, and they mention in there's a bunch of roughneck Italians down by the railroad depot. And I'm like thinking to myself, what are they doing insulting Italians? Because when I'm born in '73, I see Italians, I think of their awesome food and just, it's a beautiful country. But back 100, 150 years ago, there was a lot of prejudice going on in the country. And here's one, 1901. This was one of the nicer comments in this article. Half a dozen or more than they could count of pushcart men who were mostly Greeks and Italians. And they said worse things. And I'm like, why? But that's the way things were back then. But bringing it back away from that, lunch wagons were on the street. They could be by a big building. They could have a canvas over them to keep it, because again, they don't have air conditioning. We know that it hadn't been invented until Syracuse and Carrier. I like this one because it's right by the YMCA, the Christian Association. A lot of the lunch wagons went against the saloon keepers. The saloon keepers wanted people to come in to buy their beer. They knew that if they offered them kind of a crappy lunch, and a lot of these places did say that their lunches were less than ideal, that you'd come in, buy a sandwich, and buy 1, 2, 3 beers. Right? So they didn't like the lunch wagons. And in a lot of towns like Rochester's, they would have fights in the newspaper, this group against this group, and you'd have day upon day of just articles talking about the fights. And it's fascinating. And talking about bad, the one word that got me, dyspepsia breeder. So Glens Falls is important to me as a historian because Albert Clausen created his own lunch wagon and he started selling them in 1904. So before that, he ran his own lunch wagon and he was a genial fellow and parts his hair in the middle. Okay, right. But you'll notice the time. Most lunch wagons at this time were open up at night. So when the sun goes down, he closed early at 2:30. A lot of them would close at like 4 or 5 when people were just getting ready for the morning shift. But this was one of his lunch wagons that was in Gloversville. And as a diner geek, I love this photo, and it actually took us a while to figure it out. We actually had to do some sleuthing to figure out it was in Gloversville, which I'll let you guys in some sleuthing later. Okay, right. So, Chicago, big city. Unlike New York, where lunch wagons actually came in from the Christian associations, they were there for specifically against the beer drinkers. Right. This was an absolutely fascinating article. The guy that wrote it wrote in a very folksy kind of way about lunch wagons, but he was honest. He actually hired a detective to go around the city at night, so he knew it's kind of a different life at night. And that's where these lunch wagons were. They were all parts of the town. They talked about at the end of the article that the lunch wagons liked to be in the dark part of town where all the thieves would come, and each owner knew about 5 or 6 thieves. Right. Now, there's always talk about our teachers paid not enough, teachers paid too much. But at this time, the teachers were not paid enough. This was a professor that was not paid enough, so he decided to go into the lunch wagon business. And he started selling peanuts, and he made more money selling peanuts for probably 5 cents each than he did as a professor. And this craze caught on all over, mostly in the big cities first. Minneapolis, St. Paul had a number, and they used the word bohemian, which I found kind of fascinating. They kind of talk about it like as a craze, as a fad. Okay, I did not put in, okay, I put in the next one. Okay, so a lot of the people who'd come in were the newspaper boys, because again, they delivered you'd have like 12, nothing like an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old delivering papers, and they would get their food here. This is the one I like. The word devotees, that worship at the shrine of apple and custard. So this is showing that kind of a cultural, they were moving away from pies being the most famous thing towards the cult of sandwich. Right. And just, more kind of thing. So you might have people talking about them being dyspepsia breeders, but you'd have other writers that would absolutely love this idea, the romantic idea of devouring fowl on the street corner. They would think nothing of people would go to a play, and during intermission they would run out to the lunch wagon, get a meal, and then come back in. And that part is just, I find it just utterly fascinating. Okay. So here's what that peanut wagon might look like. Just kind of just a simple wagon that you just have to walk up to. And it's kind of interesting because this is Streator, Illinois, that it seemed like out in the Midwest, the lunch wagons that we know were not as popular as kind of the traveling wagon that just the owner would step into, and you would actually have to walk outside. But like I talked about Troy setting up ordinance, Chicago set up an ordinance just a dozen years later. So they had the same thing, the restaurant proprietors, the saloon owners, they fought against it, and they finally won by 1902, and they moved the lunch wagons out of Chicago. But they did go to small towns, so it's like a small town on the edge of the Catskills, Deposit. Still dirt roads, but they got a lunch wagon. They were a big town now. Okay. So by the turn of the century, 1900s, in Indianapolis, you could get a hamburger steak, pig's feet, fresh or pickled. And what kind of amazes me is cheese sandwiches, which I kept on popping up in different places. Right? So here's one. Cheese, Swiss cheese, Limburger. So various items that you could get at this place down in the western part of the Catskills. But they still have a lot of pies. They got about 8 or 10 pies there, so. And then I'd like to figure out what the cordial is, because I can't imagine it's an alcoholic cordial, but. So here's just a little background. Again, I like this because I mentioned the bohemianism, the unconventionality. Right. There was an article from Buffalo that a actor that was down on his luck would come into this same lunch wagon every night, and it was just interesting because a lot of the actors, a lot of the people from the plays would come in. And up in Governor, we got the a lunch wagon on the street. So again, they were the big town as well. And you talked about at the Bethlehem that there was a presentation on women. So Elmira, I found this again fascinating. This took me a couple minutes to put 2 and 2 together. The women of Elmira want their rights. Right? They want to be able to go into the lunch wagon as well. Okay. There was still kind of some undertones. Said a plump little matron today. So there were still undertones, but it was progressive, Elmira, and then there was another article I'll show you from Syracuse. It's right near Seneca Falls, pretty much. It's that heart of New York. It's progressive, which was just fascinating because other places, which I'll show you, it's lunch wagons and a lot of diners were all men for a long time. But again, they talked about here, they could make a killing because everyone shopped downtown and they had to have somewhere to eat. And the bias of this writer was that the hotels did not have good food. So this writer liked lunch wagons, thought lunch wagons had great food. The out of sight, which I always thought was kind of like a 1950s out of sight man. Here it is right around the turn of the century. Ugh. And everything's got a fascinating history if you look into it enough. So this lunch wagon was up in Syracuse. Again, they're just brought to a place and they can move from place to place. Okay, great. This is way too much to read, but basically in Syracuse, a couple women decided to run their own lunch wagons, and they were actually pretty successful at it. She talked about how on her first day she had an abusive customer, and she had to deal with a cop to come by and just check on her. But she stood up to him. The cop was just fortunately outside, and the cop threw him out. And if I jump to the next page, the cop made him pay for what he owed me, and then I begged him that he should let him go, for I did not want to get in the papers. Right. But she talked about what her customers were. The streetcar men coming from the end of their shifts would come in, the pressmen from the newspaper office, and the policemen before their shifts take a short nap, and then the newsboys come in. And what again really was neat to see is that women would come in maybe around 10, 11 or noon. The scrub women that were cleaning up, the cash girls from the stores, obviously because we had no electricity, we had no computers, so they did everything by hand. And then some actors and actresses. Like I said, Troy banned them, Albany also banned them quickly. This one guy, Samuel Bizarre, tried fighting the law, but he was arrested. So Albany and Troy, they fought it. They had ordinances. Schenectady didn't, though. This was a lunch wagon in downtown Schenectady. You can see the guy peeking his head out with some customers on the outside, but they could come in as well. And another one in Schenectady, you can see it just hiding right here in the shadow. So they started to move into the background. Okay, right. So for a while, there were short business panics in 1907, 1914. You had World War I, Spanish flu, you had all those problems, and they moved out of the newspapers. They moved off the streets, and they started to become semi-permanent. They started to get actual foundations. You can't read this, but again, they got the Swiss cheese sandwich. And right before World War I, again, things were a little more expensive, but not much. Right? A teacher would make under $600 a year. A railway worker would make $740, and a postal employee who was unionized, probably, yeah, actually, definitely, would make over $1,000 a year. So still we're not making a whole lot of money. Okay, right. And again, they were on foundations. This one, again, another Catskill town, Downsville. But as the 20s started to come in, this is what I call the golden age of diners. I like to call the 50s the silver age because of all the chrome and stainless steel. Right? Diners became popular. People were getting cars. We were getting out of World War I. We were tired. And we wanted things to be positive, and diners popped up left and right. And there were 3 regions where they came out of. First one I'm going to talk about is New England. So New England, you had the Worcester Lunch Car Company, which was a big one. And you had a bunch of smaller ones. And again, for me, I love this part. For you, you're looking at them like, what are they? So this is the Miss Albany. This was in Rensselaer. Brill built railroad cars, and they decided in the mid to late 20s, hey, let's get into the diner business. It's starting to get popular, and they built very boxy diners that looked like railroad cars. So they built this one, they built the one up by Madison Avenue, and they built the one in Menands. If you remember the Miss Troy Diner, the Miss Troy Diner was built by Brill. You can't tell because they did a remodeling, but this was a Brill diner. There was a bunch in Schenectady as well. Worcester, they built your typical diner, but they took away the wheels. Again, by the 20s, there was really no need for the wheels except for bringing the diner to one location and plopping it down. They mostly were in New England. They tried, this is an advertisement for Buffalo, and they sent a few to Detroit, but they really stayed in New England. But they did send this one up to Mechanicville, right outside the West Virginia paper and pulp factory. This became Hildreth's, if you remember Hildreth's up there. They tore that down and they built Hildreth's up. Okay. Other ones, like just like Brill decided to branch out, J.B. Judkins, they built high-end cars. And they would build just the body, and they'd put them on top of an engine. Well, they decided to branch out into lunch wagons into diners during the Great Depression. Here's one in Syracuse. For some of you, these types of diners might look familiar, which I'll show you soon. So here's an inside. This reminds me so much. Every time I see this picture, this reminds me of Danny's Diner in Binghamton. The picture just looks, in my eyes, just looks so much like that. But this diner, this was originally in Albany. This was one of the Morris lunches. And it moved over to Pittsfield, and it's still there, but it's covered over on Wacona Street. Right. But they built auto bodies, this company Sterling, and when they built them, they were not watertight. So you can see that when they tried to take them apart to rebuild them, they did not look the best. They got a lot of water damage. So this was taken by my friend. I can't remember where he took it, but I wanted to just show you that, yeah, we think of fine craftsmanship, but not always. Okay. Now I'll move on to the Great Lakes. So for the Great Lakes, I could talk about this for hours on end. This is my favorite part of the country for diner builders. They don't get enough credit in my eyes, but they came in from Albert Clausen getting bought out by Welch's and moved to Westfield. So before World War II, they were a pretty popular place for building diners, but again, they were not, they got replaced so much. If you think of New Jersey, they replaced diners so often, they got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. We did the same thing in New York with a lot of diners. But again, here's back to the Clausen lunch wagon, one up in Saratoga Springs. And other companies, so this company was out of Ohio. Imagine building a diner by building one slice of bread at a time, shipping it on rail, and putting it back together and calling it a loaf. That's what this company did. You can see one 4-foot slice, and then put them together. And then if business is so good, put addition on it. Right? I'm wondering if the inside of this diner looks like a familiar diner to the Capital District. In anybody's eyes, do they see a familiar diner? Duanesburg. Right? Same company that made the Duanesburg diner. Right? So just so you know, you can give them a little history if they don't know it. The Duanesburg diner actually came from Hudson. It was down there for a couple years, then moved up in 1937. But yeah, so this diner was built on sections, brought to the site, and then put together. Crosstown Diner in Schenectady, or the Crossroads Diner in Latham was originally a Bixler diner. So if you look right here, you can see the barrel roof on it. They tore out the counter and then put in these actual curved which is just absolutely fascinating. I wish I was around to see that one.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
Crossroads Diner, that later on was a restaurant. Did they convert it over?
I don't know, to be honest. I wish I knew.
Because it was on the landing circle until it burned down quite a few years.
Right, yes. Yeah, I wish I've never been able to figure that out, what they did with the diner and when they got rid of it. Right. And another Miss Albany diner, and the reason why I'm putting it in here is this was built in Western New York. This was built by the Warden Dickinson Dining Car Company, which is one of my favorites to research. And my opinion is that this diner was only by the bridge to Rensselaer for a couple of years in Albany, got moved to the Bassett Street and became the first Bassett Street diner, and then around 1948 moved up to where our favorite diner was, up here in Corning Hill, which is what they called it at the time. And then it was only there for a couple of years. I don't know what happened. Maybe business became too popular, and they just replaced it with larger and larger buildings. Okay, right. So here's a better picture of what one of these diners would look like. You can actually visit this. They're not open at the moment, but up in Port Henry. So this one started out in Glens Falls, and they say that it was brought from work site to work site, and for a couple of years, and then in 1934 it was brought up to Port Henry. Now what's funny, so here's another side story, is even though these diners had wheels, they were really not meant to be brought from site to site. The wheels were kept on because there was a law that if it had wheels, it did not have to be taxed as a permanent building, so the company saved money. Okay, right. Schenectady. There were more diners made by this company than we realize. There were, I believe, 3 in Schenectady, 3 in Albany, 1 or 2 in Troy, and then in different towns like Waterford. Waterford had 1, Saratoga Springs had 1, Glens Falls had 3, and there's just more than we ever realized from this company because they got rid of them by the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So here's my challenge to you. Can you find the diner in this picture of Schenectady? It is on the right side.
On the right side, right toward that intersection.
No. So it's actually this light or whatever it is hiding behind the light right here. You can just barely see the diner there. I don't even know if I can blow that up. Probably not. Nope, I can't blow that up. Okay. But this is another picture I've been looking for down by where Schenectady County Community College is today. I would love to find a picture of this because to me, this looks like one of my Warden Dickinson diners that I'm researching. So for me, this is what I geek out on. Okay, right. So by the 20s, you could have them anywhere from roughly $5,000 up to $12,500 for prices. Another one, Pittsfield. This was there up until the 90s, I believe. This is another one of these Warden Dickinsons. It started out in Dalton as a trail diner right at the start of the, and I forget the trail name, but the route, it's now Route 9 that goes to Northampton. Okay. So here's a second challenge for you. So not New York, but here's this diner. Keep it in your mind's eye. As a geek, I look at this picture, and then I saw this picture. And you'll notice that the person that put the name on it called both of these the White Diner. I think they're wrong. Does anyone see why I think they're wrong? Yep. So here's this picture. So it's the outside. And then this one shows the inside.
The inside looks a little too wide.
We have the eyebrow window.
Yeah, you'll notice on this one, the windows are spaced out, one behind the tree and then 4 more, and they've got quite a bit of space. When you come to this one, they're really close to each other, right up above the 4 women. To me, that's an absolute geek moment here. I love this part of the history. Is that now I know this is 2 different diners. Right. And then our third region, moving into New York City, New Jersey, started by these 2 gentlemen differently. Patrick Tierney was in Westchester County, New Rochelle, and Jerry O'Mahony was in, I believe, started in Bayonne, New Jersey. And they started building lunch wagons, and then those are the ones that became the ones that we mostly know. In Amsterdam, Carmel's Lunch and DiCaprio's, and if you know Amsterdam, these 2 are literally one building in between them. But they both started out as lunch wagons. Women taking their picture in front of a lunch wagon in Kingston. Again, another picture that just so fascinating. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of women did not, and a lot of families did not go into diners, is because they didn't have bathrooms until 1927. Notice the 3 windows on the left have a little stuff covering them. This actually is where the bathroom is in this diner. This was one of the first diners to have a bathroom in. My friend saved this diner from Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, fixed it up, and opened it up for about 5 or 6 years in Pennsylvania. And they moved away from that type of diner. They moved to more diners, more streamlined Art Deco by the 30s and 40s. The Brill diner that looked like a railroad car got replaced on Madison Avenue by this one, which was called the Lighthouse Diner for a short time. And then another Miss Albany, right at the corners of Washington Central and Northern. Again, very streamlined. You got the curved windows, and you got kind of a more elegant looking. And the Metro Diner, my friend took this picture and sent it to me. I wish it was before the covering, but still showing the Metro Diner, which was, again, another similar looking diner originally. It would have looked very similar to this. Now, by the 40s, though, the prices were getting a little higher. Right? You could go anywhere from $14,000 up to maybe even $26,000, $27,000.
$51,000.
Yes, I missed the $51,000. Thank you. Okay, all right. And as O'Mahony and Tierney started getting popular, other companies came in. Dewey's Diner, which was originally in Kingston, was originally $18,000 in 1940 when it moved to Kingston. And it got moved up when the restaurant on the site burned down. They knew that Size Diner, which this was called in Kingston, was for sale, and they bought it and brought it up. Okay. Yes?
How would they bring it up that distance so big?
They probably even needed permits back then. They probably had a big truck and just brought it up by truck. Sometimes they'd bring them up by night.
So all in one piece?
Yeah, all in one piece, amazingly, yeah. This, if you know Seinfeld, was in 1 or 2 episodes of Seinfeld. They brought the diner from New York City up to Liberty. And again, if we want to talk about complete disclosure, I was lucky enough to be there when they brought this diner up. And the strangest thing, I'm walking to one side of the diner and I smell this thing and I'm like, something doesn't smell right. The bathroom was on the outside of this diner, and over all those years you could still smell where the bathroom was. Right. But other companies too, like Paramount, another company in New Jersey, they built the first sodium diner outside of Schenectady, and going towards Duanesburg at the Five Corners, where Top's Diner is today. And just like I said, diners were replaced quickly. Here's a diner, or a lunch wagon that survived into the 1940s in St. Johnsville that got replaced with this. And this lasted into the 1980s. But again, more streamlined kind of look, kind of sleek, elegant, trying to catch your eye. Now, a lot of people think of diners, they think of truck drivers. And yes, a lot of truck drivers did go to diners, where today they don't as much. But even if the diner was on a street in a residential-ish kind of neighborhood, they would still pull up to the diner. Dansville, this is an absolutely fascinating town. So they had two diners that came in the 20s. And here's one of them, here's the Dansville Diner. And they were both popular with visitors, with truck drivers, people from out of town. This one, whoops, I want to jump over, okay. This one was owned by a woman, Miss Fern Fullington. She is absolutely fascinating to me because she actually got two of her relatives into business, into diners in different towns. So not only was she a diner owner who won for itself a listing as a 3-star truck stop, she also got relatives into the diner business. And then there was the other one in town, Mike's Diner, which got moved when they were building the post office. And they thought so much of the diner that you really can't tell which one's the original diner. Is it the side one? Is it the front one? They just liked that design. And this was Mike's Diner. Again, people came in. They were quickly added to the list of friends, which, how often do you hear that in like kind of family-run places? You come in once, you're now a regular. All right. He would tell, he had some humor. Some of them were kind of a little mean humor. Some of them were very funny humor. One of the ones that he'd like to tell people, someone would come in, sorry, free hour's over. You got to pay for your meal. Right. He would do a lot of things, and he would tell his opinion on society, tell his opinion on government. And people loved him. They would come in when they were in town. Palmyra, another Western New York town, you can see this is kind of like on the edge of downtown, but this was a truck stop diner. Truckers would come into this diner, and the owner would let them sleep for a few hours and then call to them, it's time to get rolling. So this guy was an absolutely fascinating owner. He was an actual cowboy. He actually retired from being a cowboy and going out and doing shows, and he started to buy the diner. And then again, just before World War II, it was a popular truck stop. Elmira, downtown, or just on the edge of kind of the big buildings of downtown. Here's another Warden Dickinson diner. But from 1933 up to the World War II, when the main streets went through downtown Elmira, this was where the truckers stopped. So before they bypassed, they stopped at these diners in the cities. Latham. Now here's one that was actually out kind of in the country at the time. The Linwood Diner up there, kind of where 9 and 9P meet, somewhere in that area. This did have room enough for the truckers. Let's see if anybody recognizes this diner. So this was in Rensselaer County up until, I'm not sure, Brian, somewhere around 2000, and it got bought and moved over to Albany to Joe Murley's village that he created up in Guilderland, or past Guilderland. So this was the 9 and 20 diner. I'm sorry?
Chuck wagon?
Oh, no, close to the Chuck Wagon, just down the street. It got bought, and somebody owns it in Columbia County, and I don't know who, but that's what I was told. So in the picture, in the front was a person who I met over at Joe Murley's Village, Gretchen Decker. She was a waitress there in 1940, and this is her in front of the diner over there at the Village up in Guilderland with her husband. So this diner was another popular place for truck drivers. The Hallenbecks owned this diner, and this was kind of fascinating. Her husband would run the day trip, and he would leave his wife to run the night trip, but she was best of friends with the truckers. Right? And they were flyers, and they flew around, and they would think nothing of lunching in Boston or Atlantic City. So they could run this business but still find time to fly, which just blows my mind. Okay, so this is part one. So I wanted to give you some history, but I wanted to give you some actual things that you can do on your own. So you're not going to be just visiting diners all the time. Nobody does. When I visit diners, I think of this mantra. I think of this commercial. Whoops, just got to run this here.
Listen up. This entire season boils down to one word.
Bundle home and auto.
But that's 4 words.
Not if you bundle them.
Right? Bundle your vacations. Throw diners into your vacations. So I created a book that's free to download on Internet Archive. And you can go to Internet Archive, and once this loads, you can look at the book for free online. And you can go through the pages, again, once they load. And there's a bunch, these are my 55 favorite diners that if I could visit, I would be visiting every day, but obviously I'm not.
Can you make that larger?
Let's see, can I? Oh, aha. No, that's, there it is, there it is. So these are some of my favorite diners, and I will show a bunch of these. But so the book is set up, if I can just get this very quickly, where I show the diner, and then I tell a little history, some things that they have for food, and then some other things that you can visit. Bundle your vacations. And you can get this on archive if you just type in 55 diners and go to archive.org. It should be right there. Right. So when I think of diners, I think of this quote. This quote is fantastic. There are people that think of diners as just a place to get a meal, like a McDonald's, like a Burger King. And then there are those of us who understand diners, who cherish them, who seek them out and settle into them, right? Even if we get a small meal or a big meal, we're charged by just sitting in the diners and soaking it in. Whether we're thinking of happy childhoods or thinking of just, we just love the architecture, or just that it brings the community together, right? Every diner is different and every diner is the same. Right? They look different, some of them, but they're the same. We're expecting a really hospitable owner, some great waitresses that give us some banter. Maybe they call us hun. Right?
What are you having?
Right. But bundle your vacations. Even if you have a crazy passion, there is somebody out there in today's internet that has documented it. I've documented diners. A friend of mine has documented chocolate milk. Right. Just to show you a quick video. So this is a gentleman, PJ, who I've become friends with, who goes out and documents.
There's so much amazing chocolate milk from Pennsylvania. I've got all kinds of reviews from over the years. So here's my best attempt at doing 3 reviews in under 3 minutes. I met Down on the Farm Creamery in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, in Lancaster County. So they got chocolate milk in glass bottles and in plastic, all different sizes, including little half pints, which I very much appreciate for when I'm just doing the initial tasting here. So, how is this stuff? Wow, okay, it's a little thicker than you expect. It's very thick and strongly chocolatey. So due to the thickness and the chocolatey factor, this is a chocolate milk that I think a lot of people would like a lot. People oftentimes prefer a thicker chocolate milk, one that's not always so grassy. This one's not very grassy. It is homogenized, it's not cream lined. So this would be, I think, just a really good version of what most people picture chocolate milk being to them. So I would highly recommend this Down on the Farm Creamery.
So, like I said, look at him mention those words: homogenized, cream line, grassy. How often do you hear anybody mention, oh, my milk is grassy? But there are geeks out there that just absolutely love it, and if you got a weird passion, there's probably somebody out there that shares that weird passion. And he mentions the Pennsylvania Dutch country. Here's all the places that make their own chocolate milk in the Lancaster area. So if you're down there for the Amish, maybe put in one or two of these, or 3 or 4 of these, whatever you feel like. And there's diners down there as well. There's an absolutely gorgeous diner, the Neptune in Lancaster. They're in Ephrata, the Cloister, which was built by Silk City, the same one that built the Miss Albany down in Broadway. One of my absolute favorite, Warden Dickinson Diner in Middletown, more towards Harrisburg, Cuppies. The owners, single family owner since 1933. It's just gone from generation to generation. And they really care about their community. A gentleman lost a money clip. They found it, they posted on Facebook that they lost it. Somebody came in. This guy was, if I remember out of here, yeah, he's just been diagnosed with Parkinson's. So what does it mean for him to actually have somebody honest? And to know that he can go to a place and know the owners, where they're so honest, where the food's great, it's family. So for me, this is just, this is what everybody thinks about as diners. And then just down the road, another neat diner, the High Spire. Again, for me, I'm down there, my stomach can't eat 2 or 3 meals. It's like, which one do I want to choose? And diners even made into museums. So the Hershey Car Museum bought a diner which was actually made in Kansas. So they didn't just make them in the East Coast, they actually made some of these out in the Midwest. We've actually found a couple made in California. Let me see if I can get this. So this, perfect. So another one at a museum. So this is the original diner. The thing at the left was actually built on site to imitate the diner. This is at a airplane museum. That's why it's called the Tin Goose Diner. And they brought it from Pennsylvania up to Port Clinton, Ohio, and they attached it to the museum. And you can actually eat meals in this place. Oops. Let's see. How do I go to the next? There we go. Here's another crazy thing. Enough people like pinball that they've made a map of every pinball machine in the United States that they know about. Right? And if you want to visit a bunch of them in Michigan, Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum is just a museum for arcade games, pinball machines. And this is outside of Detroit. And if you feel like eating at a diner, you can go to Ann Arbor and eat at one of my favorite diners. This diner was built in Toledo as a kit. They actually shipped it up to Ann Arbor and then put it together. And this, again, has the local touch on it. They've just put stickers on it. This one is not a diner, but I just like it too much. This is a kind of a White Tower clone. Again, you don't have to always eat at diners. This is still family run. And they serve hamburgers, just little sliders. Another diner a little farther up in Michigan. This one came from outside of Utica. In 1988, it had a fire. They closed up. Someone bought it and shipped it to Michigan and fixed it up. And it's actually reopened again. It's not a Mexican restaurant any longer. And if you want to get outdoors, Sleeping Bear Dunes is absolutely fantastic. If you're able to, you walk up this huge dunes and you look down in the parking lot. And these pictures cannot do it justice. You walk about 2 miles to Lake Michigan, look over Lake Michigan, go to Lake Michigan, and there's a day, and then come back to the diners the next day. Right? You're up in Michigan, lighthouses. Somebody did a map of lighthouses. Here's all of them in Michigan. Right? You like beaches, and you like beaches in a little warmer, go to Wildwood. There's a diner in Wildwood. Right. There's a lighthouse in Wildwood, or just outside of Wildwood. So you can, again, bundle your vacations. Head a little farther down, Washington, D.C. So this is one of my probably top 10 favorite diners. It's in Bethesda, and I don't know if you know Bethesda. It is interesting that this diner has existed because Bethesda is built up. It's very metropolitan. This diner sticks out like a sore thumb. Probably half the town wants the diner gone because they want to put up a big high-rise, but the other half absolutely love what the diner represents. So for me, I'm part of that other half. I'll drive down on a Saturday so I don't have to pay for parking. The only time that you don't have to pay for parking. Park half a block from the diner and walk here and then just soak it in and then just head off somewhere else before the traffic picks up. Right. Down on the Delmar Peninsula, an absolutely gorgeous diner with some actually great seafood. The only reason I don't go here more is I cannot stand bridges, and the Delmarva Bridge that goes across to Virginia, I can't handle it. So I know my limits. But on Kill Devil Hills, if you know this area of North Carolina, there's this diner here. And you can't see it, but it's got a big building behind it, so it has a lot more room than this diner. But the food is absolutely fantastic at this place. The food is just fantastic. The diner's fantastic. And there's lighthouses nearby. Right. Go down even farther, Atlantic Beach has a diner. You can't see this from the outside, so that's why I took the inside picture. But you go inside, that's a diner. Right? You want to get away from diners? Drugstore soda fountains. They're not up here, but they are down south and they are in the Midwest. This is in Missouri. I absolutely fell over when I saw this. Just a drugstore, but here's a soda fountain. Another one in Mississippi. So I walk into this place. I found out about this the morning that I was passing through this town by pure chance. I go in there. They were doing a Bible study at this place. And so I sat in there for a few minutes, listened, and then took this picture. There are places to meet. There are a few diners down south, Charlotte. Gentleman brought the diner down from New Jersey that got flooded in New Jersey, fixed it up. And he's from New Jersey himself. So Charlotte's got this one, and they got this one as well. This one was actually built in Florida. So in the 90s, kind of going on the thing where diners were popular for a while, they started building these shinier than real diners. And down south and in the Midwest, you can find a bunch of these diners. This place is very popular. They're actually the Midnight Diner because they're open 24 hours. Okay. Doesn't look like a diner, but this was built out in Kansas. This started as a Whataburger. So if you know the chain Whataburger, the Whataburger company in Texas decided to have Valentine, the company out in Kansas, build 4 of these, send them to Florida. This is the only one left, and it turned into a regular restaurant. So if you go in the door where the guy's going in, there's a counter for about 7 or 8 people and nothing else. Right. And again, to ship the diners to Florida, they had to be narrow. So here's a narrow diner down in Hollywood, Florida. Here's, again, another one of these shiny new diners out in the West Coast. So if you like the East Coast, you like the West Coast, or you like the out the peninsula of Florida, Pensacola, there's diners out there as well. Now, to move away from diners for a second, we know that this time of year is maple syrup season, and out in the country, these maple syrup places open up. This place is out in western New York in a little town just outside of Angelica, New York, near Hornell. This is one of the absolutely neatest places out there. This lady in red will pour the pancakes, give her a couple seconds, flip them, give them a couple seconds, plate them, take a quick rest, and do that all day for 2 months out of the year. So right now, if you go to this place, Cartwright's Maple House, I believe, you'll probably see her behind the counter. I went there on a Saturday when the temperature was literally 0, not 32-0, but 0-0, and there was a line outside the door on a Saturday. So they love this 2 months of the year out there. Right. So hitting the road, literally hitting roads. Some people like to actually visit or travel every road. They like to travel every county, every state park, every national park, every capital. So something people will travel, and while you're on the road, you want to find an independent place, a diner, right? The Lincoln Highway. So I just typed in on YouTube Lincoln Highway just to see what I could find out. There are all these videos on the Lincoln Highway. Right. Route 66, look up Route 66. Tons of videos on Route 66. Right. So here's one that I like to travel, Route 6 in Pennsylvania, especially if you like the outdoors in the country. You hit Wellsboro, and you got an absolutely gorgeous diner in Wellsboro. They call this the Grand Canyon of the East Coast. It's nice, but it's nothing like out west. But there is a kind of a canyon there. So you continue on Route 6, and you run into this diner out in Coudersport. They brought this from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And then you go out farther to Corey, Pennsylvania. Here's another diner. They brought this from Huntington, Pennsylvania. We almost think it's a misspelling, but out in this area, for some reason that we still cannot figure out, they call diners dinors. And this is right outside of Erie in a little town that GE built, basically. It's right outside of one of the GEs in Erie. And it doesn't always have to be diners. It can be a root beer stand just going a little bit farther out in Route 20 out in Ohio, just as you enter Ohio. Only open up, if you know Moxie's Ice Cream is only open up in Wineskill from basically Mother's Day to the start of September. Labor Day, thank you. Right, same thing. This is only open up a couple months of the year, but you drive down the road and you see this place and it's like paradise. Just get a root beer float. They make their own root beer. They can put soft ice cream on the top. Fantastic. Travel out farther, outside of Indianapolis. So in Indianapolis, they actually have an old Coca-Cola plant turned into a hotel that you can stay at. I haven't done it because I saw the prices, $300 a night, just a little too high. But I always go through Indiana now, and I stop at this diner. This is one of my favorites as well. Again, and a lot of these are my favorites because I don't get to visit them. It's kind of like you think of, you know, when you move away from home, you're like, oh, I'm coming home. Well, these are my favorites because I don't get to visit them that often, where I kind of take some of the diners around here for granted, and I know I shouldn't. Right. Another diner built out in Kansas, in Columbia, the Broadway Diner, and I became quick friends with the owner here, and he was nice enough to do a video.
Hey there, folks. My name is Dave Johnson. I'm here in Columbia, Missouri.
I own and operate the Broadway Diner, a 1961 Valentine diner. We've been in operation. My family has had this since 1989. The business actually dates back to 1949. I'm just going to give you a quick little tour of the place. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Let me just jump. Okay, let me just jump to this. So this is what the inside looks like.
This is our dining room. You can see we're closed down for the day. During COVID, we changed things just a little bit. We kept our counter, but we lost our booth seating, replaced them with chairs. We took out a couple of tables and took the opportunity to shorten the tables so we can get wheelchairs throughout the whole building. The former front door is now the back door, the exit only, and the far end of the building here we have a ramp that makes the whole place accessible, and folks coming around here through the side entrance, we have a little waiting area, restroom, and then we see people at any of our 6 tables and counter seats for 8. Hope you'll come by and see me sometime. Thanks.
So he's not that far from that drugstore place, which is, again, for me, it's a 2-for-1, bundle my vacations. Oops. And speaking of roads, the mother road, Route 66, somebody's made a map. Somebody's highlighted a bunch of things on Route 66 that you can see. Right. Boots Court is an old motel from the 1940s that got fixed up. And absolutely gorgeous in the downtown is their City Hall building. Gets lit up at night. So again, bundling those vacations. Down in Texas, an old gas station that they fixed up along Route 66. Another thing that you may not think about, colleges that actually make their own ice cream. There's a few of them. So as I was heading to Kansas and wanted to visit a couple of diners, I stopped at the Kansas State Dairy Bar and I picked up some chocolate milk and some ice cream. Right. And there are still diners out in Kansas. Stacy's Diner in Junction City, right off the highway, right off Interstate 40. And then there's these really neat towns. So a lot of people think of Kansas as flyover country, but there's actually a pretty big book, and this is called Kansas Guidebook for Explorers, written by a Kansas native, and it just tells you about different places to visit. Like in Wilson, Kansas, they got this egg, some artwork that you can visit, and they got a really neat hotel that you can stay in that they fixed up. No diners, but still, it's America. It's fantastic. And then there's these places built by Valentine as ice cream places. So they still built it. It's still portable, but it's got a different shape. And I actually, I don't want to say I found it because it was always there, but for my personal knowledge, I found one of these in Westchester County that I never knew existed. So they made it all over the country. And then if you're heading west, you have to stop in Colorado Springs. This is a neat place. So this was a one-off diner built to look like a castle. The owner said, I want it to look like a castle, but it's a Valentine diner. You look inside, they love the stickers as well. It's just got a counter on this side, counter on this side, 2 stools by the windows to look outside. And if you're in Colorado Springs, you got to go to Garden of the Gods. These pictures do this no justice. This place is absolutely gorgeous. And then just up the street is Manitou Springs, which is kind of a mix of Saratoga Springs and Lake George. They got a little arcade where you can kind of play, bring the kids, but they got a bunch of springs as well. You can drink the water, walk around. Right? And then one of my last 2 areas, New England. Does anybody know what this map represents? This is going to be a tough one. You would never think about this. Bowling other than 10-pin bowling. The green is Canadian 5 pins. Or no, yeah, the green is Canadian 5 pins. The yellow is rubber band duck pin bowling. The reddish one is candlestick. No, regular duck pin. And the blue is candlestick or candle pin bowling.
What's the one in the Albany area?
The Albany is actually at Cross Gates. They got 2 lanes of candle pin bowling that I just found out about that I have not done yet that I need to do. Right. There are too many diners to mention that are just neat. So I picked 3 ones that you might like up in Gardner, Maine. They do upscale. They take diner food and they bring it right up to here. So they do kind of some upscale kind of food. And this is up farther past Portland. Worcester, Mass. The Boulevard. Worcester was, again, where lunch wagons came from. And there's still a few diners left. Boulevard's one of the iconic. They're open up 24 hours if they can get the help. They've had trouble with the help since COVID. And Wilson's outside of Boston and Waltham. And I chose this one for a purpose because you notice the Christmas decorations on it. Christmas is a reason to travel. The last 2 years, my job has forced me to travel during Christmas. So I've been going down to some of the southern states to still get warm. And it's amazing how many places make their downtown festive. They put a big Christmas tree. They decorate. And Scranton, not too far away. Scranton is impressive. Scranton Wilkes-Barre. They do a lot of lighting up the town. And there's diners to visit as well. The Glider, and then down towards Wilkes-Barre is Dee's Diner, currently in Plains, Pennsylvania. So I'm hoping I can inspire you to kind of bundle your vacations and include diners in them. So thank you for coming, and I will answer questions in one moment. So, you had a question?
Have you heard of Chef Daryl's Mountain Diner?
Yes.
Lake?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a neat one, yeah. Yeah, Chef Daryl's in Blue Mountain Lake. They moved that. Oh, God, I used to know the story of it.
It came from Patterson, New Jersey. It was in
built. Yeah, it was built in Patterson, New Jersey.
of Miss Albany Diner.
Yes, yes.
And then moved up there by Betsy Falwell, who was one of the Adirondack Lake magazine.
Right, yeah. Okay. I'll get back and I'll come in the front next. So,
Can you talk about the transition to the sort of 1970s sort of gaudy diners and the Greeks that owned it?
oh, yes, yes. So, as the 50s were ending, right, diners were predominantly Greeks. The Greeks would come over to America, and a lot of them didn't speak English. So the easiest job for them to get, especially if they knew somebody, was being a dishwasher in a diner or a candy kitchen or something to that effect. And they built up their money. They built it up until they could buy their own place. And I mean, this was the American story. I mean, no doubts about it. But they brought their influence. You know, as everybody started having the stainless steel diners, they wanted to be unique. They wanted to stand out. And they thought about their homeland and said, how can we bring our homeland into the way that the diner looks? So they brought in the stone. Yes, do you want?
What's Saturday Night Live did a skit on the Olympic Cafe. It was based on a Greek with John Belushi.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, it's really good.
But yeah, so one of the Greeks was a builder of diners, Giraffe down in New Rochelle. And again, they were like all too much. I love the idea. Let's bring that in. Let's make it look like homeland. And that's what they did, is they just made it look like that. And it was not terribly difficult to take the frame of a diner and just put a different body on it and then bring it inside as well. And I'll tell you, I remember having a talk with one of my diner friends in probably 2002, 2003, saying, I kind of like these diners, but they're not popular. And he goes, watch it. And eventually, we're going to run out of these diners. And if you try to find one of these diners today that hasn't been remodeled, it's difficult. So, history is important to even documenting current history. It's important because it goes away before you know it. And you had a question, front? You're good? Question? Yes.
The one that was moved from Utica to Michigan,
Yes.
I'll give you a little information.
Oh,
It used to be called a Yorkville Diner.
okay, Yorkville Diner, yep.
And it got burned out. It burned down and then sat there for a few years, and then it was moved to Michigan.
Right, are you okay? So it was there for a couple of years, okay.
I was out there and I had it placed out there, so I knew it.
Ah, okay.
That's what happened.
When you said the Greeks come, this gentleman, he came here from Greece at 17 years old, worked at his uncle's place at Latham 76 Diner, and then he saved enough money
Yeah.
to get his own diner, and, we've
Yeah,
been
it's,
at the diners ever since.
Where is it?
I didn't speak any English then, but I still don't.
Yeah. Well, we were at Western Diner for 20 years. We owned the business, and then we bought the old Vivian's Diner, which is now called Skyline Diner, and it's a family business.
wanna hear
Tony,
something
myself, and
funny?
the kids, and we love it. It's what we do,
Where it's located?
on Route Rensselaer on, is it Broadway there?
9 and 20.
9 and 20 is easy, yeah.
You want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
Did you take those pictures of Vivian's?
I believe I did.
The waitress that's in there now, she still works for
Still
us.
works.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Great, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough.
I'll give,
I have a question. We had a diner called Quintessence.
yes.
It's not, it was earlier than Quintessence, it had another name, because my aunt used to go there. But when Albany met, they bought property. Do you know if they just assembled it or moved it someplace?
I think they destroyed it. I think that they would have had to grease too many wheels with the city to move it out. And that's kind of the thing that I kind of get sad about, like when I think about the Miss Troy Diner. The Miss Troy Diner's right on the city street. They took away the 3 parking spots in 1990, and here you are, there's really no place to park. And the cities, I don't know, I just disagree with, and the same thing with this diner. To get that out of there, they would have had to done so many permits and close roads down, and they probably didn't want to deal with the permitting and the closing the roads down to get it out of there. They said it's just too much hassle. Oh, wow.
What's the history of Johnny B's diner that just recently moved away?
So that was the 3rd diner at that location, or, location, because it was originally across the street. There was actually a great article in the Bethlehem Historical Association newsletter from fall 2020, just so you know as well, that I got handed. And so that's the 3rd diner that was there. Like I said, I believe that the Bassett Diner moved up there around 4950, was there for a couple of years, got expanded. They replaced it with a stainless steel diner, which burnt 1 year later. And then it got replaced with the current one, the one that was there.
That was Miss Glenmont.
Yes, the Miss Glenmont.
That became Uncle Milty's.
Yes.
He just recently passed away in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then it became Johnny B's.
Okay, right.
And then they moved that one out because Stewart's wanted to buy it, the property, but they have a little conflict there, waiting to solve it, so.
Yeah, I'll get here and then here. So I'll get.
You mentioned Miss Albany several times. Is it the same diner?
So Miss Albany, yeah, I probably went too fast on that. Miss Albany was a chain of 7 diners in the 20s and 30s. And it just didn't work, but they were a chain of 7 diners, and he just sold off 1 by 1 or 2 by 3, at a time. And then the Miss Albany that we know down on Broadway, they just took the name because it was there. Okay.
What do you know about the Blue Bend Diner in Bennington? That is one of the tightest diners I've ever been in my life.
Yeah, so that is actually very similar to the Miss Albany down on Broadway. It was built by Silk City. It's been there the whole time. And trying to think, it was owned by a family for quite a few years, and then because of Bennington College, they had a lot of vegetarian items, and it kind of got caught on with New England Magazine. It was called the favorite diner of Vermont for quite a few years because of New England Magazine. And yeah, it's just caught on. I'll get here and then.
You know, speaking about the favorite diner of Vermont, you know anything about the polka dot in White River Junction?
No. No, that I do not. Okay. You had a question in the back?
Yeah, what do you do for a living that gets you into so many states?
So I work as an education specialist at Hudson Valley Community College. I help students with math. So during my time off, I travel. And before I had that job, I worked at a restaurant for a number of years, Italian restaurant. So during free time, I'd travel, and yeah, I just, you know, again, I'd not only visit diners, but I would do other things along the way. And
You bundle.
yes, I'd bundle, yes.
There's one in Lake George, too.
Yes, that's a sad one. So the one in Lake George was a rare diner. It was the same company, Silk City, that built the Miss Albany, but they built it with two sections, which again is another part of diners that, you know, they could put them next to each other and build bigger sections, but it burnt down like, I believe 2 weeks after the hostess, who was there for like 40 years, passed away. So it's just, you know, double sadness that it burnt down. Good question.
Yeah, I saw real quick on one of the pages you were looking by the Littleton Diner.
Yes, yes.
Tell me about that. I've been there a number of times.
Yeah, so that's a neat diner. That was it's a Sterling diner built in New England and just got moved up there. So it started out in 1930 with Eugene Stone, and he put a Warden Dickinson diner up there that was used, and he ran that for 10 years, and he replaced it with the current diner up there. And it's kind of interesting because it's kind of like is Resort Town the right way to say it?
It's becoming that way.
Becoming that way. It's kind of like this little kind of catching on town in northern New Hampshire. People go up there to be in the country, and it's a cute little main street, and the diner's just been along with it since, like I said, 1930, 1940s when that diner came in.
There was a couple diners in Latham that you touched on. I know the one that's still there on the circle. But the other one you had a little farther up the road, you know exactly where that one was?
No, I cannot figure out where that was. It was the Linwood Diner, and when they put it in the old city directories, they don't really give you an idea of where it was. It was just somewhere near 9P is all I can assume. But again, I'm guessing. Get here and then.
I was just wondering if anybody had ever heard of the Bassett Diner on Bassett Street, close to St. Anne's School and South Grove Street, Bassett. In the 50s, 1953 to 1963, my parents were running it.
Okay.
Could you comment on the Cooperstown Diner?
So the Cooperstown Diner was actually, it started out as a lunch wagon, but they replaced the lunch wagon with an on-site building, which is actually kind of happened more than you know. So in New York City and the metropolitan area, it was easy to call up the diner owner 10 years later, trade in your diner, get a new bigger diner. But out in the farther regions, it was tougher, so a lot of people would just take a wall out, take the whole thing away, and just build a stick-built building. And that's what they did in Cooperstown. Maybe as early as World War I, they replaced the lunch wagon and put in that small building and just called it a diner ever since. Okay, here.
Can you tell us anything about the Miss Florence Diner in Florence, Massachusetts?
Yes, that's another Worcester. That's another Worcester diner. It's outside of Northampton, and it's been interesting because for me it's gone up and down. When I first went there, I was like, wow, this place is fantastic. It had a few kind of bad years where the food was kind of mediocre, and it's kind of picked up again. So it's kind of like ebbed and flowed, which, again, you know, time moves. A person always told me, history exists in time, and I really like that phrase, because you can love something at one time and then it kind of changes. It's still the same building, but it kind of changes owners, it changes things. So for me, I also always like that phrase.
Are there any lunch wagons in museum?
The Dearborn Museum has a lunch wagon that they fixed up completely. It was the lunch wagon, they say it was the lunch wagon that Henry Ford went to when he was building his way up. And they actually do have a diner as well, actually, in the museum. So the question in the...
Do you know anything about the diner that Edward Hopper painted in the nightclubs in New York City?
No, I do not. I believe that one was just a actually storefront kind of restaurant, but I could be wrong. Okay. Well, get one question, then I'll go.
In Wells, Maine, a number of food wagons that they now bring together, I think it's on Fridays, and it's like a little port of its own, and they have all different kinds of foods for those chuck wagons.
Yes. Yeah, and they're doing it in other places. I've seen it down in Texas in a couple places where where the warmer weather, obviously, they'll bring the food wagons on a certain day of the week, and it's just like lunch wagons all over again.
Yeah. Okay. So you said there's no soda fountains left within driving distance?
There may be, I don't know about.
Yeah.
Do you know one?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. There may be. I get conflicting reports if there's one in Sherburne Falls, Massachusetts. I've not been able to prove it, but yeah.
You mentioned a diner in Mississippi.
That was a drugstore cafe. I believe it was in Water Valley, but I could be wrong with that. I know it was in the eastern part. Okay. Well, I think you guys got to close up, right? Because it's about 8:30. Okay. Thank you for coming.